My mission in this conference is only one thing: to form a community. And by having people who haven't sat in the same room be there together and converse civilly and learn from each other, you start to break down barriers, you start to break down resistance.
The future of the economics profession depends upon the introduction of new ideas and the reconstruction of old ideas. And the other is what you might call it the politics and the sociology of academic and professional economics.
We have to learn from what happened during the crisis to try to make everybody understand that we shouldn't go back to business as usual with domestic solution, because there's no domestic solution to global problems.
The fact that we've got conferences like this and you've attracted such an eminent guest list of economists, leading economists from all over the world, I think shows that even within the sort of mainstream of the economics profession, there is some recognition that there's been a big failure here.
The idea that you can be with the head of the Department of University of Chicago and a left-wing Keynesian or Marxist from Cambridge, England, or from Italy, and you can all be in the same room and you can explore issues, was only possible because this crisis destroyed the confidence in expertise in the economics profession, and it destroyed the feeling that you could ignore the need for reform, regeneration, or renewal.
I formulated a specific hypothesis for the crash of 2008, which holds that it was the result of a super bubble that started forming in 1980 when Ronald Reagan became president and Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It was the belief that markets correct their own excesses. Reagan called it the magic of the marketplace. I call it market fundamentalism.
You need to put finance back in its box, where instead of representing 41% of the profits of the entire economy, as was the case in 2006, it's representing maybe 6, 8, 10% of the profits, as was the case in the 50s and 60s.
Well, the system of beliefs and incentives that has come to prevail on Wall Street is one in which if it goes well, they get the upside. If it goes badly, the downside comes onto society. At this particular moment, they're not taking as much risk as they could because they remember the crisis. But it's a cycle, right? This is a credit cycle. We're at an early stage of the next cycle, and they will take more risk as we move into this cycle.
That is to say, if I undertake too much risk, if I go to Las Vegas and gamble, it hurts me and I lose. It hurts me, it hurts my family, but it has no systemic consequences. The reason we have regulation is that if the banks don't do their job, and when I say the banks and the other parts of the financial system, if they don't do their job, there are large systemic consequences.
Most of the major U.S. banks were allowed to buy their way out of TARP within months. And in fact, off the article that appeared, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, just before I flew over here, the 2009 bonuses were records. There's nothing like that that's ever happened in the history of the globe.
The central problem of our era is that markets, in particular financial markets, have gone crazy. And so the necessary balance between markets and civil society has tilted in the direction of markets. And so government plays a major role in the economy, but it plays a role in the economy to facilitate and to bail out the mistakes of multinational corporations and bankers, rather than to counterbalance the security and the opportunity that regular people need, so that corporations and financiers don't dominate everything.
What I see going on in the United States is an attempt by the Bush administration and now the Obama administration to restore money managers to their pre-crisis role in the economy. This is a huge mistake. If this is done, they will create another crisis, maybe more severe than the one that we've just went through. And I don't think it'll take very long at all for this to happen.
There's been a lot of what amounts to propaganda. People are not willing to call propaganda what it is. I mean, I talked about these free markets. Another one is this financial innovation. You know, Martin Mayer has called, in finance, innovation is finding ways to do with new technology things that were impermissible under the old technology. which implies that it has no value added.
And that means derivatives, it means options. And that has been a fantastic way to make money over the last 20 or 30 years. Valuing contingent claims, particularly for banks who create derivative instruments, and they're very complex to value mathematically, and that means you can sell them for hugely more than they are worth. So it's hugely profitable. But mistaking, power and wealth for truth, it's a bit like confusing beauty with virtue.
George Soros actually earlier today suggested a way in which regulators might enliven their contribution to any meeting. Since George said regulators were partly to blame, he said, and I quote, "What we need is a bit of Chinese-style regulatory self-criticism." So I guess I should feel fortunate that I've not been put in a sort of set of stocks up here so that you can throw things at me while I make sure that I'm adequately self-critical.
In some ways, the crisis has been a bit depressing as a student, because before the crisis, most students thought that the economics we were learning seemed a bit unrealistic, but the professors thought it was fine. And since the crisis, the professors still continue to teach it. And so we think it's kind of a shame that even after some of the models have been proved to be completely meaningless, we still seem to learn a lot of them.
One can safely say that there are a number of things about which we should not be speaking anymore. Rational expectations, hypothesis, the representative agent model, the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model. These things, we can take them out into the garden and bury them.
To me, is missing in economics are really good data sets. I mean, if I could get a data set of all the invoices and receipts of all the firms in the world, and I had that over the last 50 years, then I think we could sit down and really make a theory of economics that would tell us what influences growth and development. Because we'd see the whole interconnected network of the planet, and we'd see how it was growing, and we'd see what took hold and what didn't.
Markets are tools to support society and its goals, and the financial sector is supposed to enable commerce. And we've had the servant's servant become the master's master. And it's time to rebalance where we define the social goals explicitly and we turn the economy into a mechanism in service to society.
This is the first time in the history of humanity that our economic system is actually bumping into the boundaries of the biosphere. And of course, climate change is what we all are familiar with, but that's really just a system of a much more profound challenge. Shifting the direction and the growth of the economy to produce real wealth as opposed to money, and real wealth defined as sustainable life supporting wealth in the both natural system as well as in our social systems is absolutely, in my opinion, the direction we need to head.
The crisis is broader than the financial crisis. It's not about finance, it's really about people. It's the massive misery of the large numbers of people across the world who live and die in misery with wealth piled all around them. And that's unforgivable. It's our sin of this historical period. And so that's something that needs to be challenged.
The great social movements of the 20th century haven't been decided upon by politicians or even academics. They've been driven by social movements and people requiring change. The economic crisis is also an opportunity for real new thinking about how we make economies work for people and not vice versa.
The general idea of the conference is really interesting, because to say that we should kind of basically start again and say, let's relook at economics, let's see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, let's work out what we should have thrown out. Because, I mean, as someone said, we haven't really thrown anything out as economists.
Nothing's ever settled in economics, that's the great thing about it. Keynes, people are always coming in and say, Keynes got it wrong. Now people are coming in and saying, the people who said Keynes got it wrong, the Lucasians in Chicago, Milton Friedman, now they got it wrong.
It is about the politics of ideas. The one thing we don't want to be in is a position whereby we've, in a sense, spent our capital to prop up a system which is fundamentally similar to what it was before.
I think INET is great because it brings different people together with different points of view, and it's nice to be challenged by people who do things a bit differently.
And that's, I think, part of what INET wants to do. You provide a place where you can discuss these ideas seriously. You bring together the old school economists and the people that are bringing up these challenges, and we can have a real discussion.
The Institute certainly seems to be off to a promising start. I mean, the fact that they've attracted such a blue chip list of people to come to this first conference, I think that alone is extremely encouraging because it says that there might be a critical mass of people within the economics profession who are willing to say, look, a lot of things we didn't work very well. We really need to rethink things, and that in turn has policy implications.
If we can get an equal hearing for dissenting voices among people who think seriously about economics, then you begin to shake the tyranny of this idea that markets are perfect and governments should not mess with them.
So if we ask the question, should new economic thinking explore the implications which would follow even if people were fully rational but operating within real-world constraints? Or should it explore the role of instinct and emotion? Or should it recognize Keynesian inherent irreducible uncertainty? The answer has to be all three. I think we need to ensure that public policy debate is not constrained by acceptance of an oversimplified version of one strain in economic thinking, but open to the great variety of insights which good economics has always given us.
People are talking to each other. They're exploring issues. They found it safe to explore issues that might have been taboo in one corner or another in the past. It's just a beginning. An awful lot of what we have to do is make intelligent research grants and foster and mentor and build out from here. But as a flag-raising ceremony, I'm very pleased.